compensation is no longer just about making the money at the end of the day, but also having a healthy environment, having supportive coworkers, feeling like you have a future where you are. And it's all kind of a whole package that convinces you like, yeah, I will work hard. I just kind of need the right conditions. I feel like I
Yep.
can grow.
If you enjoy this podcast, don't forget to subscribe and follow it in your favorite podcasting app or YouTube. It's the best way to avoid missing future episodes, and it helps the podcast tremendously. Welcome to the Unlocked Potential Podcast. And today, we're filming virtually right here at the birthplace of Silicon Valley, the HP Garage. I've met over 100 founders and CEOs, and the number one question I get from boomers is, how can they relate better to Gen Z? We brought together an amazing panel of Gen Zers to answer the questions that employers have asked us to ask them. Let's get started. So to kick it off, we have a tradition here at TANDA, and that is we like to intro, we call someone out when we ask them, hey, what's your name? And tell us something about yourself. And so in this case, let's talk about your favorite dessert. And I'm going to pick Neil. You can start and you can pick who goes next. Neil, go ahead.
I'm Neil, and my favorite dessert has probably a pistachio tiramisu, which I had from a restaurant in Toronto, and it's awesome. Allison, why don't you go next?
Neil took mine. My name is Allison, and mine is also tiramisu. Yeah, it's great dessert. And Kelly, do you want to go next?
I'm Kelly. I had to think a lot about this question because so many desserts immediately flashed through my mind. But I would say I like a simple butter croissant because you can really taste the quality of the ingredients when you're eating something simple. I'll pass it on to Wilson.
Hi, my name is Wilson, and my favorite dessert might be mango pudding. I really like anything mango. How about Rahul?
Yeah, hi. My name is Rahul, and Neil and Allison both stole my answer. Mine is also tiramisu. How about Claudio?
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Claudio, and I love tiramisu, but I'm going to do a different one. I'm going to go with gelato. I'm from Italy, and so I really love a good gelato. I'm going to go with Kathleen. Is that how I pronounce it?
Yeah, it's Caitlin.
Caitlin.
Hey, everyone. I'm Caitlin. And I love fruit, so I think I'm going to have to go with a chocolate-covered strawberry.
Nice. I think that's everyone, right? Got everyone? Great. Those are all great desserts. I got to share mine. So, yeah, it's tiramisu for sure. And specifically in Milan, and to this day, I still cannot find the one that really changed my life. And so that's another story. But yeah, tiramisu, absolutely. Cool. So to kick things off, I found this really funny video, and it really captured this difference between baby boomers and Gen Z.
Sorry I'm late.
You're my lawyer?
Bro, I got this. My client is innocent. No cap. This evidence is not giving. The whole case is high-key sus. We have receipts, Your Honor. Facts.
Let me get this straight. Everyone spilling the tea on your client is straight capping. Did I catch the vibe?
On God.
Then I have no choice but to rule. W's in the chat.
Yes!
What?
Translate to the boomer.
Not guilty.
All right, so what do you guys think of the video?
I feel called out.
I'll be honest, I'm Gen X. And so when I saw it, I go, W's in the chat. Okay, I guess that's a win.
Yeah.
But I think it goes to show how it's funny, but it's very real, right? Like yeah, I know what sus is, and I know I have a 12-year-old, so he's Gen Alpha, so I learn a lot from him. But I think this video really shows some translation is needed. But I also love the energy and how there's a difference. So yeah, just a big fan of the video. To kind of kick things off, we're gonna start with something fun, and you've probably seen this, but like, what does this word mean? So I'm gonna start with a baby boomer word, and the word is groovy. And so I'm gonna ask you all out there, think for a sec. If someone used the word groovy, what do you think it means?
Disco.
Disco, okay.
Flare plants, groovy
Okay.
patterns, flowers, disco.
Disco. All right. Any others?
I think it just means cool.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah, same.
cool.
Yeah, I'm
All right.
thinking of like waves, like something that's very curvy, like groovy. That's what I think of.
All right, let's get one more. One last one. Any others?
I'm thinking kind of like a laid back, kind of cool.
Okay, laid back, cool. Let's get the answer. So the answer is ChatGPT. Tell me, what does the word groovy mean?
Groovy is a slang term that originally became popular in the 1960s. It means something is really cool, fashionable, or excellent. People use it to express that they like or enjoy something.
Nice. I think you guys can hear that, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Yes.
All right. Very cool. And then here's her boomers. They have a hard time understanding this word, Riz. So this comes up a lot, and I'd love to hear from you guys. What does Riz mean?
It's charisma. So when someone's charismatic, they have riz.
Okay, charisma. Any others?
It's the best explanation I've ever heard.
Well, that actually
That's
is
the
British.
etymology.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay, I want to.
charisma.
Okay.
What this makes me think of is just like another slang word. It makes me think like someone's got game. You know, I don't know what era that
Yeah.
begins to, but
Yep. And then that's true. And then so Riz is like the charisma or the Riz in charisma, and so meaning you got game or you some kind of magnetic personality. But share some context. How would you normally use this word?
Well, to riz someone up.
Okay, to riz someone up. Okay, all right. No, Caitlin,
Rahul rizzed
how would
up
you
the barista and got a
barista?
free coffee.
Oh, okay. So you got a free coffee. So say that again, Kelly.
Rahul rizzed up the barista and got a free coffee.
Okay. And I was asking, Caitlin, do you have an example of Riz? How would that be used?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I guess it's just kind of like being a smooth talker and yeah, I don't know, getting what you want out of just like using your words and your personality, which is I guess the definition of charisma. So
Okay, nice. Okay, so that's new. I don't have this in the deck, but I'm curious. The word sigma that comes up a lot. Are you guys familiar with that word? So my son's 12, and he uses the word sig. I don't know. He's always singing now, and he's talking the word sigma. So that's coming up a lot. And Freddie Fazbear, there's this song. So anyone know what that is?
I think that's Gen Alpha. I think we're the boomers in this
Oh
situation.
wow. Okay, so we found out where you guys don't know. Yeah, it is Gen Alpha. All right. I actually don't know. I think Sigma is probably like I don't know, if you have a crush on someone, your significant other. I think that's what it means. But I got to go ask him. I'll find out. So
That's nowhere close to what I was thinking.
All right. Cool. Next thing. What's a hand sign for this? And so I want everyone at the same time on the count of 3, if you were to like play charades or some games, say, hey, give me a hand sign that shows telephone. Or sorry, not telephone. How would you take a picture? Give me the hand signal or hand sign. How would you do it? So on the count of 3, 1, 2, 3. This is what a baby would do. Okay. All right. That's good. And then we'll do another one. What is this item used for? Have any of you guys seen this before?
It looks kind of like a cassette, but not really.
Yeah, it looks like a weird cassette.
Yeah.
Looks like a weird cassette. At least you know what a cassette is. That's great. My son does not know what a cassette is. If I showed him one, he'd be like, what is that? All right. So none of you know what this is, right?
No.
Okay. So this is called an 8-track. It is a cassette before the cassette that you're all familiar with. And so growing up, I remember my dad had one. And I remember I just used it maybe when I was like 3 or 4 years old, and I broke it and never worked again and never replaced it. But yeah, so this is 8 tracks. I actually don't know why they were to use the word 8. Maybe it has 8 songs or 8 channels or something. But basically, yeah, when you bought like music back in the day, you buy 8 tracks. And so this is, now more modern would be like I don't know, like an iTunes download. But prior to that would be CD. Prior to that would be a cassette. And yeah, so this is an 8 track. Yeah, we already did this one. So I want to talk some common baby boomer stereotypes of Gen Z. And so don't take this personally. This is just ChatGPT and also the baby boomers I talk to. But these are some various stereotypes. So my initial thing is I want to share these stereotypes and get your initial reaction. But also I want to give you an opportunity to, do you agree with it? Is it wrong? And so I want to give you every opportunity to really, let's talk about it. And so here's the first one. Entitled. Not a very great word, but Gen Z expects promotions and rewards without paying their dues. Do you guys agree with that? What are your initial thoughts? No? Okay. Why do you think people would think that? Or boomers in particular?
My hypothesis is that, and at least from what I've seen online as well, is that boomers, they were raised and they grew up in a generation where things were easier in general, and so they may have not had to work as hard to get a nice house and a car and to raise a family. But instead, in our case, it's much harder, and so I feel that just because our generation isn't able to get what the boomers were able to get, they think that we're not working hard. But I think that we do work like really hard, even with the whole influencer theme now. Like a lot of people are really hustling. So I think it's unfair to say that.
That's a great point. Any others?
Yeah, I think I completely agree with Claudio. That was pretty much what I was going to say. Like the scale in which we're measuring like our cost of living to theirs, they could get by without expecting promotions or rewards. On a starting salary, it is way harder to live now than it was in their era.
I actually had a very different opinion. I thought that like the boomers had to do much harder jobs, like, they had to work in the mines or like do some physical labor stuff. But like Gen Z tends to have very cushy jobs, right? Like a lot of us probably work from home and like we expect to do that and things like this. So I think because we have cushy jobs, we're not paying our dues, or at least that's what the perception is, because it's not physical labor, which is seen as harder work.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Neil. I feel like the job landscape of like what a typical job looks like has changed. So maybe it's harder for baby boomers to kind of, I guess, determine what hard work looks like with these like stay at home or work from home jobs versus what it used to look like in like maybe more manual labor jobs or jobs where you are like actually going into the office.
Caitlin, Kelly, any thoughts?
Yeah, I think I definitely agree with kind of both of those viewpoints. I think in general, life just looks so different. So it's really hard to compare like apples to oranges. I think maybe even back then, maybe your career and your life was a bit more linear and there was a really, really straight path that you could easily take and it was almost guaranteed success. Whereas now there are so many different paths you can take and success isn't always guaranteed. So I guess a little bit more risk in that sense.
Kelly?
Just on the topic of like physical toil versus mental toil, it just makes me think about like my parents owned a convenience store growing up, and my dad would work from like 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. just at the convenience store, no breaks. He would need like food brought to him. He'd only get to go to the bathroom when my mom was there so she could watch over the store. And now I work from home and I can cook myself a lunch whenever I want. If I need to step out for an hour, I can. So I can definitely see people looking at that and they just look at the schedule and say, well, it's completely different. You guys are doing nothing. And perhaps some of the more mental things, like just stress from working a different kind of job, the mental stress is different from physical stress and the physical labor.
Yeah. The unrelatable point like makes total sense because the world looks completely different. Even with like just Uber and like DoorDash and stuff like that. Like I can see how that like comes off as being entitled or being, oh, this is very easy. You guys have it so easy. But it is completely different stresses.
These are great points. I was reading this book and I was also watching another podcast, but I like the way they present it. When you think about Gen Z versus baby boomers, and I'm not a baby boomer, so I can only kind of project what it was like for my parents. But as an example, back in the day, it was like, hey, you just get a union job, work hard, and it's fine. Like you can take care of your family, you can do all these things. But now when I think about Gen Z, there's no set path. There's no union job. There's no pension. There's no like safety net. And so in many ways, you're left on your own. And then on top of that, I agree that the stresses are very different. And it was only until I started like meeting more of you and thinking about, hey, what are you guys stressed about? What's the situation? And then I realized from from the day you're born, like in the Instagram age, and everything's so perfect, and kind of like, how do you achieve perfection? How do you grow? And it's just like the bar is so high, right? So like you gotta get good grades, you gotta do this, you gotta, the expectations are super high, but there's no for sure, right? Especially now, given the economy and the climate and everything. And so yeah, so I would say in many ways you all have it much worse and it's more stressful, mainly because there's no path. Like I think like when I talk to like the boomers and even my grandparents back then, I just remember they're very specific. All you have to do is do this, get a good job, make sure it has a union or make sure it has good benefits, and you're set. And but here it's like, what does that even mean? Like there is no set thing. And so I think that is a huge difference. And then to all your point, I agree that physical labor back then, it was like jobs were more physical, it's more hands-on, but nowadays it's in many cases very virtual, or at least more hybrid, and that creates a whole new rubric of how things are. Cool. Next question. Disloyal. They don't stay at jobs for long and lack loyalty to employers. What is your what do people think about that?
A job is a job. You get your money, you put in your 8 hours. If an employer could lay you off at any point in time, what is to hold you back from leaving them at any point in time?
Good point.
Yeah, I also disagree. Well, I agree with the sentiment, but like I don't think that this is a bad thing. I feel like again this comes down to like different environments. I of course don't know much about how it was back then, but like even the fact that it was normal to work for 30 years at the same company, like I can't imagine working in the tech industry, and there are very few places that you can say that I can stay for 30 years. Like especially with the economic downturns that have gone by, like even like my mom who works at a tech company, like she's seen so many layoffs, one every few years. So I kind of think that our generation's very jaded because we have like been put into an economy where the cost of living is high. We also have instability from the employer's point of view. Like they can lay you off at any time. So it's like, why should we care about you if you don't care about us?
Great points.
I would agree as well. I mean, I think that now it's much more okay as well, culturally and socially, to just switch jobs at a more frequent rate. Of course, I don't think it's something that happens, say, on a yearly basis, because then you don't gain as much experience. But as Rahul said, I don't think that is as common nowadays to stay at a job for 30 years, like say my dad is doing. So yeah, I don't think it's a bad thing, but I do agree that that's something that is happening more.
I think this also ties into the point you made earlier, Jesse, about how there's no one set path for people anymore. And I think as people do jobs, they also realize that, hey, maybe this path isn't for me. And in some ways, it's never been easier to try out different paths as well. And so I think that also allows people to have more flexibility because a lot of the barriers that existed before to switching jobs no longer exist. And so there's nothing uh, tying you to a given employer unless, employer is particularly great. Nothing's gonna tie you down.
Yeah, and also I think for many employers, like a lot of companies are new, and maybe they haven't even been around that long. And then to all your points of if there's been layoffs and changes, and so you don't really see this as a place to park your career, right? So definitely there's some challenges there. Let's go to the next one. Overly sensitive. They can't handle constructive criticism without taking it personally. Ooh. Ouch. Is that true?
I think it's very subjective. I mean, I know people that is true for. I know other people that are very resilient instead, and they can take a lot of criticism. So I wouldn't say that's a blank statement.
I have. I think that our generation is the first generation where any sort of like oversensitive behavior can be like broadcasted and exposed. Like I feel like it's probably the same in every generation. Otherwise, like the term Karen wouldn't exist.
Yeah. And well, Now, if anything, I think it's I would assume in some ways Gen Z is more conservative because now they know, hey, if you lash out, who knows who's recording what? You might be the next Karen, right? Or the next whatever meme. So definitely but I want to pick this topic apart just a little bit. So when I meet with a lot of boomers and leaders, they share about, hey, back in the day, um, a job is a job. You clock in, you clock out, and you go home. That's it. But nowadays, there's kind of like this. They call it transactional versus transformational leadership, meaning, hey, we have to look after the person. We have to be like mental health, work life balance, and also thinking about like, hey, are you okay? Is everything okay? But back then, you don't talk about it. Like the stuff at home, it's like you just don't talk about it. But nowadays, it's kind of like it's almost like expected or at least a desired place to be. Hey, like they actually care about me as a person. It's a very supportive place, and so want to get your take on that kind of feel of like a 9 to 5 clock in clock out versus a place where, hey, they really care about you holistically. Is that important to you all, or is that just a stereotype?
I think it
I
depends
mean, I
on.
think it's
Go ahead.
I yeah, I think it's definitely important to be at a place where it feels like you're cared for, because I think that also gives you motivation to work harder because you also feel like you're part of this company because everyone cares about you and you care about them. Otherwise, I think the 9 to 5 clock in clock out mentality also exists. I just think it's in some ways shunned upon a little more, and I think it only happens in situations where people are already dissatisfied with um, the maybe the work they're doing, the kind of work they're doing, the employer, things like that. I mean, that's what quiet quitting is, I guess, right? Like that's what people call quiet quitting. It's kind of funny that the norm from before is now considered quiet quitting, like not going above and beyond is like a bad thing.
Yeah, I feel like this significantly depends on the person and the employer. Some people want a 9 to 5 job because their careers, they don't want to be their lives, or they don't necessarily gain satisfaction directly from their career. And I think that's completely okay. I know a bunch of people who prefer it that way. But on the other hand, like I'm like Neil. Like I want, like, work is a big part of my life. I want to care about it. I also agree that the expectations of most companies has crept up the more connected you can be outside of the work environment. So I feel like it is definitely become the norm to overwork. And I can kind of see how, like, yeah, the 9 to 5, like, it doesn't apply anymore, uh, in a lot of different ways from both sides, pretty much.
Allison, any thoughts from you?
Yeah, I mean, I think once again, as we become more and more connected, and I guess as we kind of have more insight into like different ways you can work, where you can work fully remotely, or you can go into an office and you can work there. And as people are kind of more exposed to like all the different options they have, you kind of get to form more of an opinion on what you'd like to do. And I feel like in the past, you have like a smaller field of vision. So if everyone around you is working office jobs, you might just think that that's the only option out there, and you're not looking for something better. But then you see, people online working remotely, or people actually enjoying going into the office. So I feel like these decisions are on an individual basis, but definitely more informed, which is why we're seeing more of a spread, maybe like among Gen Z.
Yeah, and I think care goes a long way. Have a little bit of, I don't want to call it sensitivity training, but just being sensitive to, hey, there's a, there's better ways of having these discussions and helping people. So definitely cool. All right, next one. Tech obsessed. They're glued to their phones and social media, even at work. Thoughts on that? I'm gonna ask Kelly.
I actually have a lot of opinions on the previous point, but not
Oh,
so
you do?
many on this
Okay.
one.
Let's
I
go back. Okay,
do.
sure. Let's go. Overly sensitive. Sure. Let's go back to that one then.
Two thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, I'm curious about the difference in definitions between perhaps what a baby boomer would consider constructive criticism versus what a Gen Z would consider constructive criticism. mayhap they consider it constructive to pull you into a room and yell at you for 45 minutes and say, why aren't you taking this feedback appropriately? Whereas for Gen Zers, that would be considered abuse. So I think first we need to clear that up. I mean, what exactly is constructive? And on the second side, I was thinking about this yesterday. I spent 8 hours of my day at work. That's a third of my day, 5 days a week. I want to be in an environment where I feel cared for. I enjoy the people I work with. I have a good time existing here for almost a third of my life. Because if I think about it, if after work I clock in my 9 to 5, I go do something like an external activity, volunteering, a class, something, and then I go home to my partner, my family, I spend less time with my partner than I do at work. So I might as well surround myself with as many people who somewhat care about me if I can find an environment like that. Because why would I not want to spend a third of my life in a place where I am at least happy? Perhaps for baby boomers, this is not a minimum requirement, but for me, if I can discover and find it somewhere, I would like to achieve that for myself.
Makes sense. And I feel the same way too. Caitlin, you're nodding. So what are your thoughts there? Anything to add?
Yeah, no, I was actually going to say, I think it's just maybe overly sensitive in a different sense, because I think maybe I'm trying to think of what it would look like for a baby boomer. And maybe I think the offices were a lot smaller. So like, you're going in person. I think people are just as sensitive in person and caring for each other. These were like times where I feel like in offices, people would bring a birthday cake for birthdays, and if someone had a baby shower, I don't know, getting money from the office and, giving a gift card or something like that. But now, as like the work life has changed so much, I think it's so much bigger that caring for others and caring for your coworkers just looks different in a sense now. And now that might come through with, maybe being a little bit more sensitive through your communication and your constructive criticism. So I think it just looks a bit different now. I think maybe it's always been that way within the workplace.
Yeah, I'll give a very stereotypical example, and again, this is just taking a lot of liberties here. So imagine like you work at a retail store, and your job is to be at the cash register, right? So I'm just ringing orders up, and I'm sitting there on my cell phone. Customer comes in, hold on one second, let me finish my whatever. So you're kind of pausing the customer and not taking it over, and then the manager comes over. It's like, yo, Jesse, come on, like that's. You got no riz there, right? Like that's not how we handle these orders. And and then the manager has a hard time explaining to me, Jesse, hey, when it comes to customers, they come first. First of all, you shouldn't be on your phone when you're at work, even though it's dead time. And then anyway, so that's where for me, now I'm very like, oh man, like what's bruh, what's going on? Like there's no one, what's wrong with that? And so anyway, so that's the stereotype, if that makes sense. So basically, like, I'm not very receptive to feedback. Also, the manager sees clearly a misalignment of priorities, and I think it's partially because in many ways, a lot of managers just expected this kind of behavior where people know the right thing to do, and then also this idea of like, oh, it's really hard for me to bring this up, and then on the other side, it's like it's hard to be received depending on how it's told, and so that's where the divide is. But hopefully, that gives you a very stereotypical example. I'm taking a lot of liberties of how to describe that.
Just don't yell. I think as long as everybody speaks evenly with an even tone, with the intent that I would want to be spoken of the same way if someone was giving me constructive criticism, then it should probably be okay.
Great point. And in fact, I heard this from another person, and I asked, hey, why do you like this job, or what's so? He goes, and his answer is, number one, yeah, people don't yell at me here. I'm like, what do you mean? And he goes, yeah, my old place, my boss yells at me, everyone yells at me. I'm like, really? Yeah. So I think that's a great point. Like being yelled at, like no one likes that. That's not fun. But I think maybe back in the day, that's how it was. And maybe in the factory, because it's so loud, you just gotta talk loud. I don't know, but but definitely, yeah, yelling is not in my view anyway, is not the right thing to do. Cool. Going back to tech obsessed. Nelson, I'm going to pick on you now. Tech obsessed, they're glued to their phone, social media, even at work. What are your thoughts on that stereotype?
This one I do kind of agree with. I do think that there is a sort of almost addiction problem with people on their cell phones, and being kind of glued to their phones. And it's so much to the point where there's a lot of people that start to do what's called like digital detoxes, where they either restrict themselves or just cut it out completely, for long periods of time, just to not like to stay off the web and social media and all that. But yeah, I do think that these things are addicting, and um, I do find myself checking my phone a lot, even at work.
I do too. It's hard. It's hard, especially our lives are so intertwined digitally, right? And so no matter what you do, like I think the internet's connected more or less in some way, right? Like even it makes a lot of sense. Any others? Any other thoughts about this?
Yeah, I totally agree with this. It's quite hard. I feel like because these products, especially social media, they're built to be habit forming. So, in one way or another, my grandmother is obsessed with Facebook. Like she will be using Facebook on her giant phone everywhere. So it's addictive to everyone, and especially when you're doing um, like a job where you have Slack set up, you have email set up. Using your phone is part of your job. Like it's very easy to just, done with sending that email, let me just check Instagram real quick. And next thing you know, you're like 70 reels down. Like I kind of get this point and I do agree with it, but I don't think it's limited just to Gen Z.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah, and I think those push notifications hurt a lot, right? So basically, to your point, I'm doing work, and boom, you got little. Oh, what is that? And then your muscle memory kicks in. It's like, oh, where did the time go? Oh, shoot.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to add as well. That these apps, as Rahul was saying, they're just made and they're built for you to always want to check and get a dopamine hit. Because seeing like even just a red dot on an app makes you want to check what's there, what's new, right? Like that's always exciting. And so I feel it's so easy for someone to just go on their phone for one thing, and then next thing they know, they've spent half an hour. So I definitely think it's true. Personally, going on Do Not Disturb has been a great way to avoid all of that, so that I feel more in control. Like I'm going to check because I want to, and it's not just like a noise that's making me go. But I definitely agree that it's much more prominent now across all generations.
Love it, love it. And since Gen Z, you guys are a lot more tech savvy. You actually know about D&D, whereas most people don't. Cool. Today's episode is brought to you by TANDA, the smarter way to retain and engage your skilled workforce. Here's the thing. High turnover, disengagement, and financial stress are costing businesses more than they realize. That's where TANDA comes in. Leading employers are already using TANDA's financial wellness benefits to boost retention, increase productivity, and keep their best employees longer. And here's why this matters. TANDA is already helping major companies across the US, and unlocked potential listeners have the exclusive opportunity to get in before the rush hits the open market. Be among the first to supercharge your workforce with TANDA. Learn more at tanda.io/Jesse. That's TANDA.io/Jesse. Let's go to this next one here. Work-life balance prioritized. They'd rather have flexible hours and time off than overtime pay. Initial thoughts on that?
Yeah, we don't get overtime pay.
You don't get overtime pay. Okay.
I mean, yeah, like a lot of those jobs, you got overtime pay. You got something if you worked extra hours. Like we, especially in like service industry jobs, we don't get overtime pay. We're salaried, and it's expected that we work extra hours. Yeah.
Coolest spitting truth right now.
Yeah. But let's imagine you were hourly. So if you were hourly, how would you think about that? Work-life balance, prioritizing, and then there is overtime, and so.
Yeah. I used to be hourly when I was an intern. I used to do 60-hour weeks.
Wow. Okay.
I'd like to go back to what Kelly said about spending a third of your life at work. If I'm already spending a third of my life at work and I'm spending more time at work than I am with like my friends and family, I would rather prioritize spending the time outside of work with friends and family than working even more. I mean, I guess I'm privileged that I don't need the overtime pay, but if I can avoid it, then I would rather spend time on that than uh, doing overtime pay. And like having flexible hours also definitely helps with that, because then I can schedule work around my social schedule a little bit and sort of get some control back in that sense.
I guess on the point of privilege, I do also want to call out, I feel like my parents, they had the sense of I'm not only earning money for myself, but I'm earning money for my children. You know, they're kind of earning almost like a fortune to be able to pass down. And I would say like my mindset is more selfish in the sense that my parents have worked really hard. They can actually support themselves right now. I don't even have to earn money to be able to support them. I don't have kids, no kids on the horizon anytime soon. So the money I make, I am lucky enough to be in a place where I don't need overtime to be able to survive the way I currently survive. And if I could get more flexible hours, if I can instead spend my time somewhere else, like that's something I'd rather have.
And with flexible hours and time off, I think like a- as long as you get your work done, like that's what like the rise of remote work and stuff like that. Like as long as I can meet the people who I need to, and like we can sync reasonably well, and I get my actual work done, like flexible hours makes everyone happier. A lot of our work compared to boomers are mental, and you can't be burnt out and do your best mental work. Like you can't be tired, exhausted mentally. Like you're just not going to think properly. So I think it helps everyone.
Mm-hmm. Let's just do a thought experiment. Let's pretend that you're like your job is very physical, and so there's no remote work option. And in that case, um, you can get overtime pay if you work during a core 9 to 5 and you have extra hours. But what are your thoughts on that? Like, does that change? Does that really change the whole calculus of things, or just want to paint a different picture there?
I feel like it's a Maslow's hierarchy of needs kind of situation, right? As long as you can make enough money to sustain your current lifestyle, then whether or not you need overtime as a result of that, I think the physicality of it doesn't really matter. It's just, can I pay my rent? Can I buy food? And then you go from like, okay, you know what? I'd love to spend more time with family.
For me, there's a few extra variables to consider. So I agree with a lot of the points that have been mentioned. One of the things that is a factor for me is whether I enjoy my job or not. And of course, I think that not many people are lucky enough to say that. Personally, I do. So in my case, if I could work more and I'm enjoying that, then it's something that I would consider. I also think that where you're at in life matters. I think, Kelly, you were saying that, like, if you have a family or like if you have other people that you're working for, well, now is your job paying you enough for you to live off of that? Or do you need to work harder for these other people that you're sustaining for them to also have a good life? So I think the combination of whether you like your work and how much your work is paying you already are important factors. At least in my personal circle, though, I think that I have a lot of friends that really want to work hard. While not a lot of them have the option to do the extra hours, I feel that for the ones that do, they often take it. And if more did, they would also take it, as long as they still say had the weekends to go and have fun.
Cool. Caitlin, did you have a point?
I think, yeah, just to tack on to kind of what Kelly was saying too, with I think our generation too is having children and families a lot later. And I think it's a lot more difficult to do that, just the way that the economy has gone. And I don't think the salaries have necessarily risen as much as the economy has. And I think also with that, I was going to say, I lost my train of thought, but yeah, I think also as like inflation has risen, personally, when I like kind of gauge how much more I would be making for overtime pay, I'm not sure that overtime pay is necessarily like worth it. I don't know. The economic gain isn't enough for me to like. It doesn't feel like it would make a big difference. Whereas like family time would make so much more of a difference to me. I guess maybe that's a personal preference, but
Yeah, those are great points. Cool. All right, let's go some top questions. I think these will be fun. We got a lot of submissions from questions from boomers, and so here they are. So first question, Frank, he's the CEO of a construction company in Texas, and his question is this: I've worked in construction for over 40 years, and I've noticed younger workers seem to want more than just a paycheck. Can you help me understand what motivates your generation beyond money?
Maybe at least for me, going back to what we were saying with the last question, like once you've kind of made enough money to support like your core needs, I think what a lot of people like is choice. So when, or even not even necessarily choice, but just like the illusion of choice. So when we talk about why Kelly's laughing, but when we talk about why like remote working hours or flexible hours are so like enticing to people, I think it's just because you have the choice to not work traditional hours if you don't want to. But at the same time, it's like people are still working the typical 9 to 5 with maybe like a bit of embellishment here and there. So it's really just having the choice, but not taking it. Because, if we're really seeing people like really take advantage of those hours, you might see people saying, like, yeah, I'm going to clock in from like 2 a.m. till like 10 a.m. and those are my working hours. But no one really does that. Actually, maybe Neil, but
Well,
um,
yeah, yeah.
I feel like it's nice to know that you have some agency over your day. Whether or not you actually take that and change up your day is like a whole nother question, but it's kind of peace of mind.
Any others?
I also
I'm gonna
think
be a frog in a well. I want my walls to be painted pretty. Give me the illusion that I am living in freedom.
All right, so environment.
Yeah, environment I think matters a lot.
Raul?
yeah, I think it's beyond money. It's more what I can do with that money. Our generation, like we're having kids later, like we're also not following like as a lot of people mentioning. We don't have like one path that everyone is taking. You speak to another person, very likely they have a completely different lifestyle to you. And our motivation also, our generation also does stress a lot on experiences more than things. So I feel like, yeah, okay, you have money. Do you have time to spend the money? Like, do you have enough money to buy you experiences? Like, eh, just the landscape of like what people need is different. I think people have realized, um, like Gen Zers have realized that like happiness is kind of what you want to maximize for.
Yep, yep. Good point. Especially with inflation, you got to spend it before it's lost its value, right? And so, yeah,
Yeah,
definitely makes sense.
a lot of that comes from I'm not going to own a house anyway, so I might as well do something fun with it.
That's a good point. That's a good point, and I think, yeah, definitely that makes a lot of sense. All right, second question here. So from Linda, she's a CFO of a manufacturing firm in Ohio, and her question is: our industry isn't glamorous, but we offer stable jobs and good benefits. Yet, it feels like young people aren't as interested in joining. What would make manufacturing appealing to someone in your generation?
I think I think for me, I think as Linda mentions, the industry isn't very glamorous, and so it doesn't really stand out as much. So if the job itself offered something that was more unique or more fun or something I didn't see in other places, or the company culture was great, or the people, like I think something like that would really draw me to manufacturing or any other industry really, because I think it would be a fun place to work, and then the work happens well because you enjoy working there. So I think beyond just the industry, I think there's other things that the company could do to maybe entice me if the industry itself isn't enticing to me.
Yeah, definitely community. I think is something that a lot of employers, not only in like manufacturing, but a lot of other like traditional, I guess, non-tech industries could really push. Because I think we all know what like the glamorous like tech office style job looks like, where they have free snacks and they have ping pong and they have all these other like team events. And I guess whether or not there actually is community there or not, it kind of builds the idea that there is one. And maybe people just don't see examples of how they can have community in some of these other different types of jobs. But it doesn't mean that there isn't community there.
I would agree on the culture aspect. I think that's a great differentiator. And I would also add that sometimes these companies can be innovative with how they position their company in their industry. Like, yes, manufacturing could be boring, but if you put it in such a way that, hey, you're actually building some very cool machines that are being used in planes or that are being used to build the new skyscrapers, like that could attract some people as well. And I think going back to Neil's point, if you can make your work feel more important, that you're contributing to something bigger and not just going to your 9 to 5, I think that's something that's attractive to our generation.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, yeah, I think this just goes back to the whole idea of maximizing happiness, and I think usually that is like the community that you're surrounded by. You're surrounded by people who genuinely care about you, that you get along with, or on the other side, what Claudio was saying, maybe it could be more about how fulfilling the job is and what you're actually doing is, and getting that message across.
These are great points. I love manufacturing personally. Like I always watch, how it's made on YouTube. I don't know. I just love factory floors and making things. And so, but I agree with all of you on the sense of community, a little bit of a purpose and inspiring things. It goes a long way. And my mom used to work at the post office for a long time. And even to this day, she's been retired. She still hangs out with these people like constantly. And so I think that culture, is a big differentiator. If you have a great culture, and especially you think about a lot of manufacturing and a lot of jobs back in the day, that culture, it's like a family, right? And they really back each other. And so that definitely is a big part of it. So I think in making it accessible, like maybe being a little bit more social, showing there's Riz here and other things could really amp up these opportunities and make you guys want to check it out. That's good. All right, number 3. Jim, VP of a logistics company in Pennsylvania. His question is, when I was younger, we didn't question our bosses much. Now it seems like Gen Z has a lot of opinions about how things should be done. How can leaders like me encourage open dialogue with it feeling like we're losing control? Wilson, what do you think?
I think that, well, first of all, I think that in the majority of cases, there are like improvements that can be made to most processes, and that that feedback can come from anywhere in the chain of like the corporate ladder, right? So I do feel like it's important for leaders, managers to take feedback from members of their team at some regular cadence. So maybe just scheduling certain meetings or like times during the year to accumulate this feedback and actually take action on it, which is very important, could be one way to do this without feeling like they're losing control. Because I guess what the leader might be concerned about is like employees constantly like thinking that they might know better, and they feel like um, they I don't know are getting orders from someone below them is might be the impression that they're the leaders are feeling. But I do feel like it's important for them to take that feedback sometimes and show that they're acting upon it to make sure the employees feel like they're being heard.
What it sounds like is they should be open to some constructive criticism.
Exactly.
I know. Only tell me. We call it watermelon. Like everything's green, but it's really red inside, right? So, and any other thoughts on this one from anyone?
I think
I think
in general. Sorry.
Let's go, Kelly, then Raul.
Yeah.
Oh, was that Kelly? I wasn't sure.
It was me, Caitlin.
Oh, Caitlin. Sorry. Yeah, Caitlin, go ahead.
Okay. So I think just being approachable. I think maybe back then there was a really clear like hierarchy of chain of command, and no one would really speak up as much. And I think it just comes down to the leaders being approachable, and I think also being really genuine in their interests. And there's one other thing, but I forgot it. Whoever can go next, if I remember it, I remember it.
All right, Raul, go ahead.
Yeah, I actually have seen this a lot with my parents and me about how we view things differently. And to me, it kind of comes down to um, respect is earned, not bestowed upon you. So it's kind of like we don't just follow a hierarchy because the hierarchy exists. We respect people who like actually we can learn from, and who like we think like we want to be like. So I feel like a lot of times it's not about like losing control or exerting control. It's more about, yeah, listen to people, because yeah, 10 of the things that they say might not work out, but you explaining why those 10 things don't work out will, one, make them see you in a much better light, because you are kind of teaching them things that they didn't know about. And one of those 10 things might be something that actually helps things get better.
Love that. Caitlin, you remember?
No, we can move on.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I want to say, tell me if this resonates with you all, but I think creating a safe space to get feedback, but also show it's actionable. So imagine I ask all of you, hey, what do y'all think? Should we go red or blue? And you're all saying red. Okay, blue, right? Like that'll not that's not going to work very well, right? Next time I ask for feedback, like, well, what's the point of even asking, right? So I think being like truly transparent about asking and actually acting on it, and then maybe at the end you'll all say red, but I chose blue, but at least explain. It's like, hey, I know you all chose red, but in the end we had to choose blue, and the reason is because we ran out of red paint, right? It wasn't because I wasn't listening or we weren't listening. It's just because, hey, it wasn't possible. But next time we're going to go red. So I think just yeah, an environment supportive and something like that would be really good. Cool. We're going to move a little bit faster, so I'm going to pick a question, and I'm going to pick one person, and then if one person feels really strongly, just jump on in. So next question, Sharon, COO of a construction company, supply company in Florida. We always had high turnover in this industry, but it seems like it's even harder to keep young employees now. What can I do to make my company a place where Gen Z actually wants to stay? Allison.
Still big on the like building community and kind of showing that, I guess, not only are you happy to have that employee there and that you value them, but also that there is a plan in place to kind of take care of them. The way I saw it was, in the past, a lot of people have always stayed at large companies because the company kind of took care of you throughout your whole life. So at the end of it, you would maybe have a pension or something. And I feel like that's increasingly less common, which is why people jump, because maybe there's no incentive to build up time at that company. But I think there's a lot of ways also that you can show value towards employees, and it doesn't necessarily need to be like pension related, right? It can be like employment or like some type of job security related topic.
There's a company in Texas I really like, and what I really liked about it, they're like, hey, we really want you to have your entire career here, and the way we do is we promote within, we grow people, we have leadership programs, we invest, and so I think I really love that company. They're in Texas, and so um, I feel like companies like that, it's you hear that less and less. Like when do you hear that now, right? It's very very rare. But for the ones that do, I think it's a big differentiator. Would that resonate with you all if you had that?
Yeah, I think if
I think
I
it's feeling
have
cared
that,
for.
yeah, exactly. I think if they could tell me like you have a clear path to this position in 10 years if you stay, I think that's something that you don't see anywhere, and that's never a promise you can find anywhere. So I think that would be definitely something to keep me staying.
It doesn't feel like they're just milking you for all the possible hours they can get out of you, and then goodbye once you're burnt
No
out.
OT, no OT. It's just,
Yeah,
yeah.
And if they keep their promise.
That's right. That's
that's
right.
true.
Yeah, you gotta be accountable. Cool. Ron, construction superintendent in Arizona. He had this question. Social media and technology are such a big part of your world. Do you think it's important for companies like ours to embrace things like social media or apps to engage workers? If so, how? Oh, that's a good question.
If you're hiring, I think social media like is very important, like the way you present yourself to the outside world. But even companies that do have social media internally, it's more an added pressure. Oh, why are you not doing this? As opposed to, yeah, I don't want to. So yeah, I completely agree with like Claudio.
Yeah, I think social media is for presenting to the outside world, but if I'm working at a company, I want to know about things from within. Like I don't want to find out about things from social media. That's not, it would make me feel alienated from my company, and I wouldn't want something like that.
Got it. Makes sense. Makes sense. There's a right way and a
Say
wrong way. Go ahead, Kelly.
the only company that has ever made me want to work there because of its social media is Duolingo. But I think it's because whoever their person is a genius. So I'd want to work with
Yeah.
that person specifically.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a cool mascot they have and everything else. Very cool. All right, so let's go discussion prompts. So we're gonna fire some questions here. What do you wish older generations understood about Gen Z in the workplace?
I think that the world is much more complex and it's just as difficult, if not more difficult, for us to kind of get our bearings and pursue the life that we want to pursue.
Great. And then what misconceptions do you feel baby boomers have about your generation? Kelly?
We're not willing to work hard enough. I think we're willing to work as long as we feel like we have fair compensation. It's just that compensation is no longer just about making the money at the end of the day, but also having a healthy environment, having supportive coworkers, feeling like you have a future where you are. And it's all kind of a whole package that convinces you, like, yeah, I will work hard. I just kind of need the right conditions. I feel like I can grow.
Yep. And I've seen firsthand that a lot of Gen Zers, including Kelly, they work crazy hours, and so yeah, definitely, Gen Z can definitely work hard. What about this one? What makes a company culture toxic in your opinion? How can leaders avoid it? And any volunteers on this one?
Not
I think,
respecting personal time.
All right,
yeah,
Rahul, then Neil. So go ahead, Rahul.
Yeah, just not respecting personal time, like the culture of, hey, this needs to be done tomorrow and you have to do it, like regardless of what plans you have, or no, you cannot take this vacation because three other people are taking vacation. um and at the same time being like company's family.
yeah. For me, I think not listening to feedback, and I think dismissing of certain employees because, hey, you're Gen Z, you haven't worked here that long, you don't know what you're talking about. I think that would make company culture very toxic and would make me not want to work at a place.
Yeah, just not being very again, being transformative, right? Like really taking the person, look at the situation, and but I think there are times where it's like, hey, um, the emergency situation, we really need your help. Step up. Is it okay if you do this? But I think it's also how you deliver it rather than just demand it. And I think that's just respectful tone and the right way to present it. All right, next one. What does purpose at work mean to you, and how can companies create that? I feel like this is an Allison question. Allison, what do you think?
Ooh, I think long-term vision, maybe not only like personal, individual long-term vision, but also like for the company or for the team or like for the immediate people that you work with. I think it's always fun to have something to work towards. So whether it's like planning milestones, and I know a lot of companies, spend hours and hours with like milestone planning, but half the time, especially at a large company, they're either like not relevant to you and your specific work, or everyone like kind of low key disagrees with them. So it doesn't feel important either way. So maybe just like realistic planning across like multiple levels, like individual, team, company, etc.
This one. If you can change one thing about how companies treat younger employees, what would that be?
I would say to just trust younger employees more. And that's maybe also the answer to the first and second question. I feel that older generations, they, treat the younger employees as like noobs, and they may not give a lot of responsibility because you got to learn the hard way. You got to put your time in. While that may be true, I feel that a lot of times our generation really wants to hustle, and that there's people that work really, really hard and that are really, really good with less experience. And so I feel that they should just be given a shot. And I think that would be a really big thing that would change with how younger employees are treated.
Great. Any others
Yeah, to just like
before?
rephrase what Claudio said, like age does not mean competency and title does not necessarily mean competency. Like talk to the person and see what the person themselves is like, make your own opinion and then kind of go from
Yeah, unfortunately, I've seen this a lot too. I think obviously seniority and experience matter, but sometimes we over-index on that, like meaning we put too much emphasis on that. Whereas it's like, hey, if there's places on fire, we want to know, right? It's like, oh no, you're the new person. We don't want to listen to you. But it's like, yo, no, the flames. Like if you say, it's like, wait, well, why didn't you say something? You know, so it's kind of like, yeah, definitely. I think, yeah, like in the end, younger people bring a lot to the table too, and so not thinking about it that way and is a big thing. All right, so closing questions. So we have three main questions. These are really fun ones, but I'm going to start with this. What is one thing that you think that baby boomers are doing really well in leadership today?
I think baby boomers are more accepting than people let on sometimes. I think uh I think obviously there's a lot of stereotypes about boomers and how they're not very adaptive, but I generally find that once you actually engage with older people like in that age range, they tend to be very accommodating and understanding of various things. At least that's been my experience anecdotally with baby boomers.
Love it.
being
Love it.
self-aware enough to realize that a different generation does have different needs is also, I think, something that is commendable to kind of recognize that something is going on and like being reflective and being open to change. Being open to change is really hard. And I feel like the more comfortable you are with a certain way of doing things, the harder it is to change. So for anybody who's even like listening to this and like trying to change, like, thank you. Thank you from a different generation.
Yeah. That's a great point, Kelly. Because when I meet with the boomer leaders, they actually tell me like, "Hey, we know we need to change," and so they're not only open to it, but they're embracing it. They're like, "I'm willing to put away my own bias. I'm willing to I just need to know like what is the next thing." And so that's a really good point, and that's very commendable because I actually think I don't know how amenable my generation is to change. And but actually meeting baby boomers, stereotypically, I would expect they don't change. They're like set in stone, but that's actually not true. And you're right. And that's why like we're doing this podcast specifically for them because they've been asking these questions. Next one. What would you say to a baby boomer leader who wants to bridge the generational gap? What is some advice you all can give to this leader on how to really bridge this gap?
Download TikTok and like watch 20 videos, just
20?
I was gonna give the same advice. Get on TikTok now.
Yeah. Okay, TikTok. Well, yeah, it's been unbanned, so it works. Yeah, so definitely. All right, TikTok. Caitlin, Allison, and any suggestions there?
I'm kind of thinking about what Kelly mentioned before is I think just being open to it. I think if you're actively trying, I think that's like the best first step. And I think whatever context you're in, it'll look always a little different, but as long as you're trying and trying to reach out and coming from a genuine place, it'll work out.
Also
Okay,
add to just have empathy and to try to showcase yourself as another human, right? You may have 30 more years, but if you show empathy and if you show that you're trying to understand and that you also have experience that can help the newer generation, I think that will make our generation much more interested in listening and treating these older people more seriously because they want to help. So I think the way that they do that is really important and that can really help.
Yeah, I think just listening. We are a few people and we have a bunch of opinions. However, I feel like, especially in your specific industry, the needs of people might be different. Like, plus one to everything everyone said. Like, as long as you just sit with people, listen to them, and try to understand, I think that will go a long way.
Allison, any thoughts from you?
No, plus one to what everyone said. Everyone else said it perfectly. I don't want to ruin it.
Great. Okay. Last question. What's one hope you have for the future of work, regardless of generation?
I can start off. I think this goes back to what I was saying before about like the illusion of choice, or at least like having choice. I think I at least feel very privileged to have the ability to, choose to work from home or choose to work from an office and kind of, I guess, set my own rules around how I get that work done. And I think it's maybe a privilege that hasn't been afforded to a lot of other generations simply because, the jobs couldn't be done remotely or it just wasn't the right time and place. I think also like COVID changed a lot. But I would hope that those opportunities are still there for future generations. I think at the end of the day, a job is a job. And it can, do a lot to enhance your life, but it can also kind of be very detrimental, especially if it gets in the way of like family issues or personal issues. So, I would just hope that people continue to have choice around how they work and how they effectively get stuff done.
Great summary. Any others?
I mean, I hope that employees, I hope that employers are more empathetic and more caring towards all their employees. I think, at least in recent times post-COVID, there's been a lot of employees are disposable. There's a lot of layoffs. There's a lot of firings, and I think that in general just breeds negativity with employees, with their employers. And I think in general, if there was more empathy across the workforce, I think that would make things a lot better.
Love it. Love it. Any others before I ask my favorite closing question?
I would
Treat
say
your reports the way you want your boss to treat you.
Okay. Claudio, you have one?
a few quick things. I would say fair wages. I think with inflation and the cost of living, I hope that in the future of work, we can go back to fair wages where people can actually live off of them. I would also say for companies to foster more passion for what they're doing, to get workers to feel excited about what's happening. And I had a third point, but I forgot. So I'm just going to leave it with those two.
Great. Great. So here's my favorite question. You all, we had a great discussion. Thank you all for doing this. And I think for the ones that watch it, I think it will make an impact. I think we will help boomers and other generations understand, hey, Gen Z is a great generation. You all work hard, you're inspiring, but yeah, the game has changed. And so we got to be more holistic and care. So my question to you is, what did I not ask you today I should have asked, given the situation of, hey, we're trying to bridge the gap between boomers and Gen Z and make the work environment more fun. So what's a good question that should have asked today?
I feel like that's like the toughest question. You can't save that for the end.
Of course, it's saved for the end. Yes. I'm gonna pick on Wilson because he looks the most nervous.
Okay, I guess a question that you didn't ask. Maybe something like when Gen Z becomes the boomers or the Zoomers, whatever, in 40 years or whatever, and we're the old generation with our old ways of thinking. How will what do you think our generation will look like or appear like to the super young generation in the future, and what sort of what learnings can you take from the way boomers are viewed by our Gen Z generation now to avoid having some sort of as big of a disconnect, I guess.
Great question. So when it's not Gen Beta, what's it going to be called after Alpha? Yeah, but some generation, 2 generations after Alpha. Yeah, that's a real good question. And then
What are we gonna do when they say Sigma to us? How will we respond?
No, then it'll be like, hey, what's the Riz now? What's the new? That's a great question. I like that. Like just thinking about, like when it's you're the old guard, right? Then what? Like how are you going to be perceived? And also, I'm very hopeful. I think by then, I strongly believe the world will be in a better place. We've solved a lot of things, and then by then you would be able to look back and say, oh, we're glad we kind of improved things and really figured this out. Because right now, obviously, for a lot of people, it's a lot of unknowns, right? There's no known path. But I think maybe by then you're comfortable where it's okay to not have a known path. We know by first principles how to forge a path and make it your own. And so I think there's some really interesting learnings. Any others?
I would say, well, do you mean to answer that question or to have another question?
Yeah, the question. Yeah, answer that question. Like, what question should we have asked? But yeah, definitely, if you have a thought or comment, go for it.
I was just gonna say to what Welton asked, which I also think is a good point. I think that ultimately we're also just gonna fall in the same steps as the boomers now. I mean, we're all human. We all age in very similar ways, so we will also have to have that same empathy that we're now asking the older generation to have for us. We'll also need to mind the age gap and also treat the younger ones as still very competent people. So while yes, there may be some small differences, I think that we should realize that what we are looking for the boomers to give us now, we will also have to learn and change our ways to give to the newer generation.
Love it. That's great. Any last thoughts from anyone? Okay, great. Well, first of all, thank you again for everything. I think it was a great conversation. And then I would summarize, yeah, I think Gen Z is amazing. I'm really excited to see the future of all of you. And I think we're going to figure this out, right? And we're all human, as Claudio says. And as humans, community, belonging, how do we have a sense of purpose? Like, these are all fundamental things. And so, yeah, definitely excited for that. And thank you again all for joining.